Okay, good afternoon, students. In company law revision, in the previous class, we discussed about the features of a company, right? So, features we can say that those are the features or the characteristics of a company, right? So, next, actually, the next topic we are going to discuss is about the advantages and disadvantages of company. So, why I'm telling you again about the features and why what why I'm showing you the previous class of features in the sense because those points are also even comes under the advantages of a company. So if they will ask a question right about the advantages of a company, so you can write the same features because if you will observe the same features or comes under the advantages, right? So for the question, even for the advantages, write the same answer which is there for you in your material as a features or a characteristics. If for example see, write large resources, separate property, shares are freely transferable. So here we in which here it is an advantage for a company where the shares are easily transferable in the company point of view. In the company form of organization, the shares will be easily transferable between the members or between the shareholders of a company. And limited liability, large financial resources, these points you can write. Even continuity in existence, that is perpetual succession, you can write these points under the advantages of company law. But here what we miss is the topic disadvantages, right? So here you can write these are the advantages, disadvantages, merits or demerits, nature of company law in the sense also the same. So you can write it is for features, characteristics, nature, and even though for advantages. So this is also an advantages. But here what we have to discuss is mainly what are the disadvantages. So for disadvantages, I'll let you know a separate topic for disadvantages, right? So even these disadvantages are also not there in your material, but I have explained you and it is there in your running notes. Please check with that running notes and go through that, right? So now also I'm explaining you that. So those are the disadvantages. So here we can say that these are the disadvantages or the demerits of a company. So what type of disadvantages or what type of demerits are there for a company? So as we know that here many formalities, here first I am listing out the points of disadvantages. uh, Many formalities are there. Heavy tax burden is heavy, and if you'll observe, tax burden is heavy in a company form of organizations. And winding up is expensive. So expensive winding up is there. Winding up is expensive. And time consuming process, where winding up is expensive and at the same time it is a time consuming process. And members cannot have an effective control. So cannot have an effective control. So here whatever in the company form of organization, whenever they are running the company, so the effective control is not there, because as you know that owner and ownership is separate in the company form of organization. So at that time effective control of members cannot, may not. So and at the same time it is not a citizen. So company is not a citizen. If you will observe, it is an artificial person, and also cannot have the benefits of fundamental rights. So whenever it is not a common not a, common citizen, so even though the fundamental rights are also not applicable to the company. So whenever you are going for sole proprietorship or partnership of organization, so with the not sorry partnership, whenever you go for sole proprietorship, where we can have the fundamental rights, because in sole proprietorship everything is under the control of one person, sole proprietor. So automatically he can have all the fundamental rights. So still here I mentioned these what disadvantages in the company law. advantages and disadvantages topic. So in the disadvantages, first I'll mention many formalities. So many formalities are there, as you know, in a company form of organization. Large resources is there, large finance is there, and many documents we need to maintain, like MOA, AOA, prospectus, and other forms of prospectus also we need to mention in along with all the classes and contents in MOA and AOA. So for these things we need to take so many formalities, like registering with the registrar and getting update with the name of a company, getting update with the members and the directors, appointment of directors, or whenever we are appointing the auditors. So in this all formalities we need to mention, so many formalities we need to have in the company form of organization. So that very much time taking process, and at the same time so many formalities are there, so that comes under one disadvantages. And third, tax burden is heavy. So when the tax burden is heavy, so if you will observe, when a person is earning more, he need to pay more tax. If he is earning more, he needs to pay more, he need to pay more tax to the government. When he is earning less, then he has to pay less tax. So if he is earning so low, then at that time no need to pay tax for a government. So in the same way, the companies also, see, the company, whenever we are mentioning about company itself, it is having, whenever the organization comes under the company, so when it is having more in that more what large finance is there, so that comes under company form of organization. Whenever the large finance or large capital is insisted in the company, so then we need to pay more tax to the government. So that's simply, tax burden is heavy in the company form of organization. And winding up is expensive. So it is expensive, and at the same time it is time consuming process. So we can wind up the business and we can dissolve the company. So in the last unit, because here it is discussing in the first unit the winding up, but here winding up is a unit we are having in fifth, which actually we discussed in the last classes, in online classes only. So winding up, how there is a winding up of a company, what is the procedure. So we like voluntary winding up and the compulsory winding up, and what are the procedures, that means professionals or IBBI or else the NCLT, DRT, so these all authorities. So everything we need to take so much procedure to wind up the company. So whenever the procedure is very large, and at the same time it is very expensive to find out all the procedure to wind up the company, and at the same time whenever say it is a large procedure, so it takes so much of time to wind up the company. But simply whenever you go for sole proprietor and partnership form of organization, so that much expensive is not there, and at the same time even it takes less time comparing to the company form of organization in winding up. So members cannot have effective control. Members cannot have effective control. Here we need to take why members cannot have effective control, because we know that in the company form of organization, members are the real owners, right? So members are the real owners of the company, but even though they cannot have an effective control on the company. Why? Because here we mentioned in the features, if you will observe, we mentioned in the feature one topic, right? Separate property or else owner and ownership. So owner and ownership is separate. If you will observe this point under the features, because that disadvantages comes under from this advantage. So owner is separate and ownership is separate. So who is owners? Shareholders or the members are owners, but who is ownership? So ownership is in the hands of directors. So that's why the owners, that means the members, cannot have an effective control. That means they cannot have major concentrate on each and every transaction of the business. And even though shareholders are not at one place for one company, so here shareholders may spread over the world. So that's why they can't involve each and every transaction of a company. So effective control may not be comes under the point of members. And the next one, company is not a citizen and it can't benefit the fundamental rights. So in our constitution, in our India, we have the fundamental rights. So if the citizen of a person, he can free to talk and he can free to express his opinion. So these fundamental rights are there, like we heard right to heard, and right to free to educate, right to free to educate, and right to communicate. So these all are comes under the fundamental rights of a company, which we discussed in previous semester of business law, fundamental rights. But here, if the person is a citizen of particular country, then he can have all the fundamental rights of of that particular constitution. But here, company is not a citizen. So company is not a citizen. Then what is company? So company is an artificial person. We also mentioned this topic under the feature. So as an artificial person, so as a artificial person, company cannot benefit all the fundamental rights. So whatever the rights are there, so as these are not beneficiable by the company. But whenever you go for sole proprietor form of organization, so sole proprietor is a citizen, he can have all the fundamental rights from the constitution, right? So these points you need to mention under the demerits of company. So that is advantages and disadvantages, and advantages and disadvantages of company. Okay, so this question is also very important for your examination point of view, guys. And you please note that if you just read that answer for features, it can also comes under the advantages. That means if you read for once, it's there for two answers. So just be concentrate on the topic and be learn. Don't waste your time, and stay home and stay safe, guys. Thank you.